How's it? Welcome to this Wednesday edition of The Lead on News 24. Trade and Industry Minister Parks Tau's dream of realising a massive voluntary fund to uplift small black businesses gets a reality check. Specialist journalist Carol Paton tells us that Tau's new concept includes a key incentive for big business to help build the 100 billion rand chest.
So the kind of chain reaction is that almost everyone wants a good BEE rating. And one of the ways in which you get points on the BEE scorecard is through developing other companies, smaller suppliers that are going to feed into your supply chain. And they've said now, well, that is a lot of work for companies. And they're suggesting that instead of each individual business doing it, the business could then just contribute what they would have paid for this, which is 3% of net profit a year, and this would be done on their behalf by government.
It's called an ESD point, right?
Enterprise and Supplier Development. Yeah, it's your ESD points.
Later in our trending topic, political silly season's in full swing with a top Cape ANC man defecting to the Democratic Alliance. And finally, the Cullinan diamond was cut up, well, not for any South Africans' benefit, with On This Day in South African History at the end of the show.
New episodes of The Lead air Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m.
The Lead's prime real estate for any advertiser. If you'd like to advertise in this very space, mail us thelead@24.com. My name's Graeme Raubenheimer. This is The Lead, and this is the South African story. Moving to our top story today, government appears to be fine-tuning its blueprint to realise a massive 100 billion rand transformation fund that critics have previously panned as quite unrealistic. This voluntary fund is expected to uplift small to medium-sized businesses in the coming years, specifically black business. Now, though, the Trade and Industry Ministry's penned a revised concept version of this fund. And News 24 specialist journalist Carol Paton is in the studio now to help us navigate its finer details. Carol, so good to have you in studio. How are you doing?
Great to be here. Thanks, Graeme.
Fantastic. You've gotten your hands on this revised version of this transformation fund that hasn't really been seen by the public eyes. The ministry also doesn't really want to comment at this stage. How does it paint more or less a clearer picture of what government hopes this fund will eventually end up looking like?
Right. So when this fund was initially mooted, there was hysteria because it seemed like the suggestion was that this would not be a voluntary fund, that this would be like a new tax. So that's been clarified. It's not a new tax, but it is an attempt by government to say we want to maximize our efforts at BEE, especially in the small business and medium-sized business space, and we're going to do this through this fund, which is going to provide capital, which is obviously the thing that business people most need and which they find hardest to raise. So they've come up with a new, slightly more realistic concept. Shall I go through that?
Yeah.
Okay. So what they said is that the way they're going to raise this money. So at the moment, if a company wants to get a BEE rating, and many companies do, not only because if you do business with government, you want a BEE rating, but if you're a supplier to someone else who does business with government, you also want a BEE rating because they get points for that. So the kind of chain reaction is that almost everyone wants a good BEE rating. And one of the ways in which you get points on the BEE scorecard is through developing other companies, smaller suppliers that are going to feed into your supply chain. And they've said now, well, that is a lot of work for companies to develop these suppliers and nurture them and take them through sort of the growing pains. And they're suggesting that instead of each individual business doing it, the business could then just contribute what they would have paid for this, which is 3% of net profit a year, and this would be done on their behalf by government.
It's called an ESD point, right?
Enterprise and Supplier Development. it's your ESD points.
Which would then, as I understand it, help these smaller businesses get part of the service delivery chain, so to speak, so that they can also have a bite at the pie, if you will.
It's a good concept. The entire thing about enterprise and supply development is a good concept, because it's saying if you're a big company like you're SAB or you're Anglo-American, you could, you need suppliers. You need everything from people who are supplying you with stationery to people who are supplying you with machinery. And so if you are incentivized to develop these companies, it's good for the economy. So it's a good concept. It hasn't been used optimally, because when you impose these sorts of things on companies, they do view it as a tax, and they do view it as a compliance exercise. So they do view it as a tick box exercise. And for them, it's just like, let me just pay whoever to do this for me, and I don't even really want to know the consequence. This isn't the case for the big companies, by the way. For the big companies like SAB and Coca-Cola and the mining companies, they've all actually, those big companies have had very good supply development programs.
Right, so the new blueprint that has come along creates this incentive, because at the end of it, contributing to the fund is voluntary. Do you feel like that this incentive that you've just explained to us, is incentive enough to want to contribute?
Well, look, if you're going to do ESD and you're already doing your ESD and you're having to employ people, because you're going to have to employ people to manage all these suppliers. You're going to have to employ them to mentor these suppliers. I do actually think it is an incentive to say, well, let me just do it through this way. It's even easier than ever before to tick the box, because I just give the money over to the DTIC's fund. The problem is that people don't believe that government has the capacity. And I don't believe government has the capacity. Sure. I'm not alone. And that is where the problem comes. So if you genuinely want to develop your suppliers and you feel that this is something important for the economy, for the country, are you going to trust government to do it on your behalf? And I think that is a big question, although they have also in this new design made a few tweaks to that, which I think will improve things.
Right, let's get into that, because obviously this second version 2.0 of the concept for this fund is being led by Parks Tau, the Trade and Industry Minister, who of course sat on that historic couch in the White House. Didn't get really a word in, but he's leading this from the front, and he's really had a lot of criticism with that first iteration of this plan. This time round, the incentive is there. But my question really relays, there's still that criticism that corruption could seep in here. It's a very big, lofty goal of 100 billion rand in 5 years. You've made this argument in your latest piece on News 24, entitled 100 billion rand BEE fund gets makeover in version 2.0, that you're not quite certain that they're going to reach that goal in time. How come?
Well, it is really quite a lot of money. And if you sort of put together, I think, all the supply development funds that are kind of contributed in a year, it doesn't really get you a lot beyond 20 billion. Now, if you're going to be capitalizing the fund with that and spending money, it's going to take you quite a long time to reach this 100 billion. I think they'd originally said, well, they're going to do this 100 billion over 5 years, but I don't think it's realistic at all. The second issue is, whether the corruption issue. Let's deal with that. So one of the things they have addressed, they've said, look, we know you don't trust us, and with good reason. So what they're suggesting is they're saying, well, let's have government, be a government business partnership, and instead of government just choosing all the directors or whatever, business will choose their own directors, and there will be joint oversight by business and labor. So The downside of that is, it's pretty bureaucratized. The upside is that you're not just handing over to another state-owned enterprise which has got, kind of directors who you've never heard of, who you sort of think, well, are they competent? Are they
deployed? Cadres
are
that
they
are deployed?
So that they've kind of tried to deal with that concern.
So this is this new governance model that Tau has essentially put in this version 2.0, and that says what? A multi-sector stakeholder engagement will oversee the fund, right?
There's a board. And the board is, I think that was in the original proposal, that it would be a business government thing. But then there's also an oversight board, and I think there's also independent investment committees and so on. So there is some oversight of what happens, which is good, because the current story I'm doing at the moment today is the Public Investment Corporation, and that has been the big problem. They've got a big pot of money. They've got 3 trillion, okay? Similar thing, you have all these politicians on the board, and you don't really have oversight. You have Labour and politicians on the board, but you don't have oversight and you don't have expertise. And I think that lends itself to all sorts of sort of things going on which are not desirable.
Introspection's always the name of the game. That's why the media has an ombudsman.
Yeah.
Right?
No, exactly. And I think Park's time, he really wants this to happen. And so he has to offer something that is suitably incentivized and that is suitably insulated from political manipulation and interference.
What do you think then is outstanding in this version 2.0? And do you know what the timelines that the minister's given his department in terms of having something final?
Yeah, I think he's way behind on his timelines. I'm not sure what they are. But that's because, this minister just came into a complete, You
can use the word show. Yeah,
and he's been pretty busy, so I think he's pretty behind on the timelines, but I think he does genuinely want this thing to happen. The one thing that I kind of am concerned about, and that is that they talk about in the proposal, they talk about small businesses, and I think everyone agrees that is the way to grow the economy. It's these small businesses, it's these entrepreneurial type startups that need the support. But the proposal also talks about giving sort of access to finance to bigger companies, and I think that has previously not been a great success if you look at the Industrial Development Corporation and examples like that.
Sure. It's an interesting space to be in at the moment with the debate raging about BBBEE, notwithstanding the Trump administration's continued pressures on South Africa to somehow change this. We saw the latest headlines now that ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula had some engagement, some reaction in that regard. Again, the Trump administration saying that's pretty much a deal breaker when it comes to any sort of multinational trade or cross-border trade, that needs to be done away with. But on a domestic level, you've got the DA coming out with their own alternative draft bill saying that poverty should be a lever and not race. Your take on that?
Look, I think that there is a lot of consensus out there in society that BEE needs a revamp. It needs a rejig. Some people want it gone completely, like the DA. And others just say, well, look, let's do a kind of a BE 2.0 kind of thing, and target those people who haven't been targeted. And I'm in that kind of school of thought. Let's look at how. Because I think redress is important. So when you're talking about BEE, the principle of BEE is based on redress, to say, well, do we agree that after 300 years of colonialism and racial dispossession, there should be redress? And I think there should be. And I don't believe that we passed the the point in South Africa where race doesn't matter. Race matters a lot. So I'm not for sort of doing away with race entirely, but I am for saying, like, what about the marginalized? What about those people who really are living on the margins of society? Half the population living below the poverty line. What about those people? What is empowerment doing for those people? And I think in a way the DA's proposal is not antagonistic to that, because basically they say, look, if you're going to help poor people, most poor people are black, therefore you're going to help black people. It's just the case of whether you want the word black in it or not, and they don't. For me, that's not a big issue. For me, the issue is, let's do redress, let's do inclusion, let's bring in those people who are on the margins, because the society is not working in the way that it is now.
Yeah. Look, we can talk about this until we blue in the face, because from a historical perspective, I would argue that, the apartheid design, obviously, as a manifestation of the National Party, was not an overnight thing. Cecil John Rhodes had already put in the Glenn Grey Act and a lot of other measures that already had laid the groundwork for that, and the systemic sort of removal of political rights to the black majority, which that in itself, the removal of a political power, means that you don't have the levers to the economy by almost that virtue, right? And that's been as a consequence of a system that's been put in place for many years. It's not going to be outdone just overnight after 30 years, especially with the ANC, which has been prone to corruption in its own right. It's two wrongs don't make a right as well in the end of the day, which brings us to that age-old question. I agree with you and say BBBE has most definitely, and the figures show this, put wealth into many more black people's hands than ever before, and you've done sterling work in this, Carol. Well, what do you say to that argument then, that it's this black elite that now is getting what some would argue the lion's share still? Absolutely.
Look, in fact, that has happened. I mean, there's no refuting that. It has been an elite deal. The elite have benefited. So that's definitely the case. By the way, this was very much the case in the first sort of 10, 15 years of BE. In the last 10 years, almost all the big corporates that are doing deals are doing employee share ownership schemes, community-based share schemes, and those sorts of things, which is far more, I think, what people are comfortable with. Let's spread that wealth over if you spread it over your employees, why give it to one or two elite shareholders? So I think there's a general consensus that we should be heading in that direction, and I hope we do. I hope we make some progress there.
But obviously, next year's local government elections, after which will be another national elections, and perhaps by then this new fund might be a reality. Is that the ANC's last-ditch attempt at trying to make BBBE really, really work for those people that you say that are trying to sell sandwiches on the pavements of Johannesburg?
Well, there's that, but then there's also, don't forget, the BE's bill, which is in Parliament. Now that bill is in Parliament, and parties in Parliament are going to be responding to that bill. So their bill is saying, like, let's do away with the race part. I can't see them getting that bill through Parliament, getting a 50% majority in a vote in the National Assembly, but it's certainly going to open up the debate, which can only be a good thing.
Right. And this debate will rage on. Carol, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. That's the absolutely illustrious, excellent Carol Paton, specialist journalist, writer at large. Finally, 25 episodes later, I got her back on the lead.
Thanks so much, Graeme. It was delightful to be here.
Trending topic.
Moving to our trending topic now, and with months to go for the municipal polls, political silly season's in full effect, with revelations now that a top ANC man's defected to the DA. DA Federal Council chairperson Helen Zille announced today that now former ANC Western Cape Secretary Neville Dalport has since decided to shed his yellow and green colours for a blue t-shirt. Delport's departure comes days after the ANC, in fact, disbanded its Western Cape Executive Committee, so he says his decision wasn't really that difficult to make. The ANC's never really been able to bounce back after the DA clinched control of the province in 2009. It's often beset by internal leadership squabbles. Now, a trio of ex-rural ANC ward councillors and members have joined Delport in shifting political allegiances here, and it's understood 2 new by-elections have to be held soon. Meanwhile, a new ANC task team led by the ousted former US ambassador and provincial premier Ibrahim Rasool will try and re-energize the party's structures in the Cape in the weeks to come. Zilla, though, says today's announcement is just quote-unquote the tip of the iceberg of a bigger political shake-up to come. Got an opinion? Drop us a voice note 072 562 3179.
You're listening to the latest edition of The Lead on News 24 with Graeme Raubenheimer. If you've got an opinion on what you've heard so far, drop us a short voice note on our WhatsApp hotline. That's 072 562 3179. And finally,
ending off with On This Day in South African History, the 5th of November 1908. Well, on this very day, the legendary Cullinan diamond, the largest gem-quality diamond ever found, was cut into multiple stones, including the famous Star of Africa and Cullinan II. Experts had spent 3 grueling months deciding how to divide the 3,106 carat rough diamond, eventually producing 9 major stones, 96 smaller ones, and several unpolished fragmented diamonds. The Star of Africa, weighing 530 carats, was sent into the British Royal Scepter, while the other gems became part of the royal family's crown jewels. There have been several campaigns in recent years for the Cullinan diamond to be returned to South African shores. But such calls, in the absence of any real backing or official request by the South African government, will certainly be lost on the British royal family. That's On This Day in South African History, the 5th of November 1908. Before we end off, let's have a quick hot take. You may have seen Top Billing is now returning to SABC3 screens. I mean, show me somebody that wasn't a fan of Top Billing. But I thought our specialist legal journalist Karen Morn can have the final laugh here about this seemingly good news that we need in South Africa these days. Karen writes on X, formerly known as Twitter, the following 4 words, and that's all she really needed to say. SARS will be delighted. Like the 70 million rand mansion Morgan Maamela enjoyed in Sandton. Top Billing, in fact, visited there in 2019. Well, that's it for today's show. If you'd like to get in touch, you can mail us, thelead@24.com. That office still open for anybody looking to advertise on this show. Drop us a voice note if you so feel inclined, 072 562 3179. And hit like, follow, and subscribe. That way you'll be notified of all of our editions dropping like clockwork Monday to Thursday at 7 p.m. on Spotify, Apple, as well as, of course, YouTube. One more edition to go this week. My name's Graeme Raubenheimer, and so long as there's trusted news first, we'll always have the lead.